Election season heats up, and the race to replace David Wu takes center stage. Ballots for the 1st Congressional District special election start going out less than a week from now. And tonight on Straight Talk, we have two of the candidates fighting for that seat.
Jobs in the economy, that's what people care about now.
State Senator Suzanne Bonamici is in a tight three-way race for the Democratic nomination. Her take on the issues and why she thinks she has the most to offer voters.
The greatest thing I can do as their congressman is not to give them another handout, but to help them find a job that's sustainable and lasting.
Then, Republican Rob Cornilles. He lost to Wu just 12 months ago. Now he's back running again, hoping this is the year the GOP takes the district. From News Channel 8, this is Straight Talk with Laurel Porter.
Good evening, and thank you for joining us tonight for Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter. We're in the home stretch before the special election in Oregon's 1st Congressional District. Now is the time to start making up your mind. Who do you think should replace former Representative David Wu? Ballots start going out on October 21st with the election on November 8th. Here on Straight Talk, we've already interviewed two of the Democratic candidates, Brad Avakian and Brad Witt. Tonight, the third Democrat in the race, State Senator Suzanne Bonamici. And later, the front runner in the Republican field, businessman Rob Cornilles. So a lot to talk about tonight. We start with State Senator Suzanne Bonamici. Thank you for joining us here on Straight Talk.
My pleasure, Laura. Glad to be here.
You have a very varied background, so let's talk a little bit about your background. You're an attorney. You worked for the Federal Trade Commission in Washington, D.C. for a while as an attorney. Then you took a break to raise your two children, and you ran for the Oregon House and Senate, where you've served for several years. So looking at that background, what do you think the single most important thing in your background is that prepares you best to serve in Congress?
Well, thank you, Laurel. A pleasure to be here. The single most important thing that qualifies me to run in Congress is my background of standing up for families and working families and people across the state of Oregon. I've been on the side of working families and small businesses throughout my career as a consumer advocate, as an attorney, as a volunteer in our community, and as a legislator.
So a lot of people want to know, top of mind, what you would do to create jobs and to grow the economy. That's top of mind for Oregonians, for Americans. And right now, Congress has been debating and voting on the president's $447 billion jobs bill. Some Democrats have been distancing themselves from the president's plan. If you were in Congress right now, would you vote for his jobs bill?
Yes, I would. We need to get people back to work right away. And I have a few things that I'll be focusing on in Congress. First, we do need to get people back to work on infrastructure, rebuilding our roads, our bridges, electrical grids. But I also want to work on getting capital to small businesses. And that's something I've worked on in the legislature and something I will continue to work on in Congress, so that people who don't necessarily work in construction jobs, people in rural areas can also get back to work, opening small businesses, keeping jobs here in Oregon across our state.
So you think the president's on the right track with his jobs bill?
Yes, I do. We need to get people back to work right away. And there's a lot of good things about that jobs bill that I support.
A lot of people feel like the country's on the wrong track, though, and there's a new poll out. The Wall Street NBC poll came out just a couple of days ago, and this is President Obama's handling of the economy. Approval rate, 39% approve of President Obama's handling of the economy. Disapproval rate, 57%. And when they were asked if this country's on the right track, 17% said yes, but the wrong track, 74%. So to a lot of Americans, we're not on the right track. How do we change that opinion? How do we get the country going in a different direction?
We need leaders in Congress who have a record of getting things done without being offensive or divisive. And I have that kind of record from the Oregon legislature. I have a record of standing up for families, for small businesses, and a record of being able to bring people together and really accomplish things in a way that is constructive and not divisive. And that's what people are looking for. They're looking for someone in Congress who's there to get the work done. There's too much political gamesmanship going on right now. Americans need jobs. Congress needs to do its job.
Senator, how do you change that, though, in Congress? Because a lot of candidates before you said similar things, that they're well-intentioned, but when they get to Congress, there's the gridlock, and they can't get the things done they want to get done. Congress has the lowest approval rating in history How can you make a difference?
Well, I'll make a difference because of the record that I have in the legislature, of being someone who does her homework. I never forget, as I'm looking through pieces of legislation, that I'm impacting families' lives. And I'll take that record and the accomplishments that I've done in the state legislature and the reputation of effectiveness with me to Congress. And again, I have a record of being able to get things done in a collaborative way that's not divisive. And that's the kind of leadership people are looking for in Congress today.
We're seeing a lot of frustration among Americans in
Yes.
Occupy Wall Street. That has spread to Occupy Portland, Occupy Seattle, Salem, San Francisco, all over the country. Americans are frustrated. They feel disenfranchised. They feel like there's a credibility gap with Congress. They say the rich are getting richer, the poor are getting poorer. Who do you think is to blame for that frustration?
Well, there's a lot of blame to go around, but what I'd like to do instead is focus on how we can address those concerns. And I was working in Portland that day, walked down to see the faces of the people who were in that Occupy Wall Street march the first day it was happening. And there were young and old, people who were concerned about their future, the future of their children, people without jobs. And I have a history over my entire career, from being a consumer protection attorney, standing up against mortgage companies who had committed fraud. As an attorney in Portland, I helped a small business owner who had invested his life savings and lost it because of misrepresentations. I have a reputation and a record of being on the side of people who are struggling. I worked my way through college by working at legal aid, helping low-income families who were struggling. And those are the values that I'll bring to Congress. So instead of placing blame, what I'd like to do is bring solutions by bringing the leadership and the work that I've done throughout my career to Congress with me as an effective leader with integrity.
This week, Congress passed a long-delayed trade agreement with South Korea, Colombia, and Panama. It's something that Governor Kitzhaber thought should be passed as he came back from his trip to Asia, but it's something that your opponents, Brad Avakian and Brad Witt, were against because they feel it would take jobs out of the country. The AFL-CIO also opposed it. If you were in Congress this week, how would you have voted on that trade agreement?
I'm glad you asked me that question because I want to give an opportunity to talk about the values and the analysis that I will give to any trade agreement. And Laurel, I think looking at the votes from our own delegation, our U.S. senators and all the members of Congress, to see how diverse those votes were, shows you how complex the issues were. What I'm going to be doing is reaching out to the delegation and talking to them about the information that they considered, because I know how important trade is to the 1st Congressional District and to Oregon, but I also understand the concerns of the people who are worried that we'll be exporting jobs. So what I want to do is make the best decision as a representative about whether any vote that I take will be good for Oregon, good for jobs in Oregon, and good for jobs across this country.
Because as you say, it is important to Intel and Nike. They have a robust trade with South Korean and Asian countries. So from the information that you know right now, do you know how you would have voted this week?
I know how I will approach any trade agreement, and I still don't have specific information about how each trade agreement will affect jobs in the 1st Congressional District. I know that there are definitely advantages to the export market, but I want to make sure that any trade agreement is good for jobs in Oregon, and that's the analysis. I hope to be able to have more information after I talk to the congressional delegation, but I don't have that information now, and I want to be a responsible representative. I don't want to make a campaign promise or a statement about how I'll vote on something without having all the information I need to determine what is the very best policy for our district and for the state.
So you might be willing to support trade agreements in the future with more information. Expanded trade with China might be a possibility?
If I have information that shows that the trade agreement is good for jobs in the 1st Congressional District, and it has labor protections, environmental protections, and human rights protections, I may be, yes, willing to support that, but I'll have to do the analysis first. And also an important part of the votes yesterday was the trade adjustment agreement, and that's a bill that is very, very important to making sure that if people are displaced, they have support that they need for unemployment and for deductibility of medical expenses. So that was an important part as well of the trade bills.
One of the things you talk about in your ad that's running on TV right now is Social Security, protecting seniors, the Social Security program, and Medicare.
Right.
Can the country continue on the same path with Social Security and Medicare and bring down the deficit and ensure the solvency of those programs?
It's a matter of priorities, and my priority is making sure that we aren't balancing the budget on the backs of seniors and those who really need Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid to get by. And when we look at priorities of where we're spending our money, look at the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. Let's bring the troops home. Let's look at auditing and making sure that we're spending money wisely. Look for smarter, more efficient ways to do things and start closing some of the tax loopholes, getting rid of tax breaks for companies that really don't need them. Then we can talk about making changes. But right now, let's focus on all the other things we can do to protect the Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid for our seniors.
Senator, just 30 seconds left, but I want to give you time for a final thought before we have to go.
Well, thank you, Laurel. It's been a pleasure talking with you. Voting is really an important part of democracy, and I want to make sure that everyone knows how important it is to vote in this upcoming election, the special primary on November 8th and the special election on January 31st. And I would be honored to earn the vote of those in the 1st Congressional District to represent them in Congress. Senator
Suzanne Bonamici, thank you for joining us here on Straight Talk.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
And coming up next, we're going to be talking to Republican frontrunner in the 1st District, Rob Cornilles, and our commentators answer this question: should a candidate's religion matter when choosing a president? We're back in 2 minutes. Welcome back to Straight Talk. I'm Laurel Porter, and tonight we're talking to 2 of the candidates in the 1st District congressional race in the upcoming special election. We heard from Democratic candidate, State Senator Suzanne Bonamici earlier, and now it's time for one of the Democrats' opponents, a Republican, Tualatin businessman Rob Cornilles. He also ran in the 2010 election against David Wu. Thank you for joining us. It's great to have you back here on Straight Talk.
Thank you very much, Laurel.
You were here when you were running against David Wu last election. Did you ever think that you'd be back 11 months later in the same race?
No, unfortunately, I don't think anyone expected it or even hoped that this would happen to our district, but here we are. We're in a very unusual situation as a district. We're the only one out of 435 in the whole district, or excuse me, the whole country, that doesn't have a voice in Congress. So I don't know about the others, but I'm eager to get this started and get it done so we can be back in Congress representing this district.
Some of your opponents say you're not the same candidate that you were in 2010. The Democrats say you're actually much more conservative than you appear now, that you're running as a moderate to try to get elected, while your Republican opponents say you're not nearly conservative enough. So some voters may wonder, who is the real Rob Cornilles?
Well, I'm my own man, quite frankly. I think voters are a little tired of people trying to put labels on one another. This is really what's wrong with Congress. In Congress, we have too much bickering and fighting and gamesmanship, and as a result, things aren't getting done. And we're hurting here in Oregon as a result. We have a high unemployment rate that continues to be above the national average, and we have people that don't know if they're going to be able to retire, they don't know if they're going to be able to attend school, they don't know if they're going to be able to pay their mortgage. So I'm a candidate that sees what the issues are of the day. I'm not really interested in labels or identifying people by, you know, what we want them to be or what we don't want them to be, but simply I'm a small business owner who thinks with my skill set and my background is exactly what we need in this district right now.
And you've said you will not sign the No New Taxes pledge that almost all Republicans have signed. Why not?
Well, it's because I'm an independent person. I don't allow other people to put words in my mouth. And I find it somewhat humorous when people complain that I'm not following the party line, yet they often also say too many politicians just follow the party line. So people know Rob Cornilles is someone that thinks for himself. And I want the people in this district to understand that when they elect me, they're going to have someone who uses his best judgment, who listens carefully to all sides of an issue, then we'll use my basic and fundamental principles to make that decision and move forward.
There are a lot of analysts who think this country needs more revenue, so would you be willing to consider new taxes like on the very wealthy, something Warren Buffett has suggested?
Well, I do think, again, I'm kind of humorous enamored by Warren Buffett. I think he's found a nice way to use the tax code to make sure there are no more Warren Buffetts. But I think quite simply, we need to simplify the tax code. It's too complicated. There are too many loopholes that only the mega corporations get to take advantage of. So if we simplify by eliminating loopholes, by reducing the rates for all parties, people of all income brackets, I think you're going to see greater revenue. You're going to see more economic activity. And right now, more than taxes, we need taxpayers. And that means we need people who are working, actively working and contributing to the system. And that's what this election is about, is who can provide jobs, who has ideas that will actually grow the economy.
Do you support Herman Cain's 999 flat rate tax reform plan?
I frankly haven't looked into it too much. I don't know that all the details are out there. I'm really more concerned with simplifying the entire tax code. Right now it's unwieldy. We have, as a population in this country, we spent last year approximately 8 billion hours just trying to figure out how much money we all owe the government. So obviously we're spending time trying to find loopholes and get ourselves around the tax code and using it almost in some cases, especially the mega corporations, as a tax evasion scheme as opposed to a job creation formula. And that's the way I look at it. What can we do so that it's predictable for people who want to create jobs, people who want to start businesses, and that they know what's around the corner so that they can continue to invest in this country, and that will produce jobs.
As you know, a lot of Americans are extremely frustrated, as we witness with the Occupy Wall Street to Occupy Portland, and that spread to 190 cities nationwide. A lot of Americans feeling the rich are getting richer and the average American is losing ground. Do you understand their frustration?
Absolutely. I understand. I think we all share this. I mean, I'm a small business owner who's employed 60 people in the state in the last 16 years. And on top of that, I've created careers for about 500 people around the country. So creating jobs is a passion of mine. And when people don't have work, I understand the despair, the loss of hope, and frankly, the loss of self-value. And so I think it's very important that we focus on the issues that matter today, and that is making sure people have a chance to make an honest living.
The Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee, when they refer to you in press releases, they call you the Tea Party candidate because you attended some Tea Party meetings. How closely do you affiliate yourself with the Tea Party?
Well, I really don't know what we mean when we say Tea Party, quite frankly. If we mean that the Tea Party is made up of individuals who decided to get up off the couch and actually hold their elected officials accountable, who decided to do more than just yell at the TV and become active and involved in the political process, then I think everybody who's paying attention right now is a part of that movement. And so I'm very happy that whether it be the Occupy Portland, whether it be the Tea Party movement, people are paying more attention now. They're getting involved, and I think that's healthy for our economy. It's healthy for the political process, and it holds our elected officials accountable. And we don't have enough of that today. That's why we're having a special election right now, because we didn't have an elected official who was accountable.
The Democratic Party is also taking you to task on your position on Social Security. You've called it sort of a hybrid reform where you favor a private option for seniors with Social Security and Medicare. And some people would say that is really risky with the volatile Wall Street, being able to put your money in private investment. Why do you think that's a good idea?
Well, first of all, I'll be very clear. I have never, nor would I ever support privatization of Social Security. What I do believe, though, is that Social Security needs to be sustainable for everybody. Right now, those seniors who are enjoying its benefits and who are soon to enjoy its benefits, that needs to be there for them. We have made promises to our seniors. They've contributed to the system, and that needs to be something that they receive. Down the road, how are we going to make sure that the generation 20 years from now, 30 years from now, enjoys that same benefit? I think that this is frankly one of those areas where there is some common ground in Washington, D.C. This is probably the best place where we could find bipartisanship. However, I find it very discouraging that the Bowles-Simpson report, which was brought out almost a year ago, 8 months in the making, it had some common sense ideas. Some of them I agree with, some of them I don't, and yet for the most part, this year it's been sitting in the desk drawers of people in Washington. I'm tired of people talking. Let's actually roll up our sleeves, get to work, and finish something.
The Bipartisan Deficit Reduction Committee is supposed to come up with a plan in November. Are you encouraged that they might follow that plan you were just talking about?
Absolutely. I find it discouraging, once again, that we have to have another commission and form another committee. If people in Congress would just do their job, if they'd have some political courage, instead of looking at the calendar to see when they're up for re-election, but rather see what the challenges that their constituents are facing back home, I think we'd have more more consistent action, and frankly, people would have more confidence in their elected officials. But right now they don't, and that's why there's a lot of cynicism out there, and frankly, that's why the economy is hurting, because they have no confidence that the elected officials in Washington know what they're doing.
The topic of religion has come up with Mitt Romney being a Mormon, and his opponent, Rick Perry, a pastor in Dallas, called Mormonism a cult. And you're also a Mormon. What do you think about religion in politics? Do you think it matters in a political race?
Well, no, I don't think that anyone's particular religious beliefs matter. I really think you need to look at the character of the person, and I do find it a little funny that when a Republican Mormon is running, it becomes an issue. When Harry Reid runs, it's not an issue. But nevertheless, I would just say to anyone considering me as their candidate, if you are opposed to someone whose religion teaches them to be honest, to be compassionate, to value the family unit, and to serve their fellow man, then you shouldn't vote for me, because that's what I've always been taught.
Was it offensive to you when that pastor called your religion a cult?
No, I'm not offended by it. Again, labels don't bother me because I know who I am, and whether it's political labels, religious labels, I think we just have to keep our eyes focused on what's really important right now in this country, and that is we have to get people back to work. We have to make sure that Oregon has a champion in Congress. That's why I'm running, and I'm going to stay very focused on that.
The Oregonian reported earlier this summer that you didn't vote in 9 of the past 27 elections since 1998. Why not?
It was a mistake. These elections were things that I should have voted in. Whether it was because of travel or other commitments, I made a mistake, and I haven't let it happen for a few years, and I will not let it happen again.
Because the Oregon's vote-by-mail system makes it pretty easy to vote if you're traveling.
It does. However, I'm at the same time, I'm not someone who just quickly looks through a ballot and starts checking boxes. I think by doing that, it's almost more irresponsible. And I think we've seen that too often, even in this state. People need to be very careful and considerate and thoughtful about who they vote for or what they're voting for, and I intend to continue to do that whenever I vote.
Only about 10 seconds left, but do you want to just leave a final thought with our viewers tonight?
You bet. The simple thing is, in this district, we've been embarrassed for far too long because of representation. It's time to elevate our expectations of what our congressmen should be, and your viewers will know by electing me, we're going to have a much better champion and advocate in Washington.
Rob Cornilles, thank you for joining us here on Straight Talk. And now it's time for this week's commentary. Lars and David weigh in on the question we were just talking about. Should a candidate's religion matter when choosing a president?
Straight Talk from the left and from the right.
Should a candidate's religion matter when choosing a president? That's an easy question for me. I believe in the United States Constitution as the framework for the best form of government found on earth so far. The Constitution forbids any religious test for office. The founders had plenty of that nonsense back in Europe. Nobody in America should be denied public office due to his religion. Kennedy wasn't, even though his Catholicism was controversial. Being Jewish certainly doesn't disqualify Joe Lieberman. Mitt Romney qualifies to be America's next president, even though his politics and policies as governor of Massachusetts make him less than my favorite choice. His religion has many beliefs I personally disagree with, but that doesn't mean I wouldn't vote for him if he's chosen as the Republican nominee. I've even been asked if I would vote for a Muslim president. I believe in the Constitution, and if someday a Muslim candidate with the right policies and politics presents himself to America and wins popular support, I'd vote for him if I thought he'd do a good job. And I could not vote against him simply because of his religion.
Now, Straight Talk from the left.
There's no reason for religion to be a dirty word in American politics. Politicians, like many other Americans, are often moved and motivated by their religious beliefs. They should feel free to talk about them, and American voters are understandably interested to hear about them. And in the Republican presidential primary campaign, you couldn't stop people talking about religion anyway. But if there's no reason for religion to be a dirty word in politics, there's absolutely no justification for it becoming a curse. Right now, that's the issue about Mitt Romney's Mormon religion, about some evangelical Christians charging Mormons are a cult, and Romney isn't a Christian. That's appalling. Religion is part of a politician's identity, but never a disqualification. A considerable number of U.S. senators have been Mormons, including Oregon's Gordon Smith, And there's no reason to see a fence between the Senate and the White House. We've been making progress on this issue. In 1960, when John F. Kennedy was elected the first Catholic president, it was a major national upheaval. In 2008, when Joe Biden was elected the first Catholic vice president, we heard nothing about it. That's what we should hear about religion disqualifying Mitt Romney. Nothing.
Thank you for watching tonight.